Hey, note from future Mr. Kaufman. So, if you need to pause the video so that you can fill out your guided notes, go ahead and do that. Second of all, later in the video, I say 100 men deserted instead of 1,000 men deserted. The answer is 1,000 men deserted. Just wanted to say that. I'll see you in a second. Good luck, guys.
Hey, y'all. Superman might have fought for truth, justice, and the American way, but it's the Continental Army that made the American way possible. And they were about to have a fight for their lives that didn't really involve, shooting guns so much as it did fighting for just their existence. And it's a fight that matters. It's Washington's winter encampment at Valley Forge, and it sucked a lot. So let's review the story up until this point. So British General Howe took the American capital of Philadelphia instead of linking up with General Burgoyne the way he was supposed to, leading the Americans to win the Battle of Saratoga, which, when the French saw that, they decided to join the war on the side of the Americans and began providing supplies and naval support and soldiers to the Americans. Now, after this, Washington decides his men need rest. And so he sets up his military winter encampment at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, 20 miles away from Philadelphia. Now, why? Why does he do this? So this is not an encampment the way we think of it. It's not a s'mores and campfire kind of camp. His men were exhausted and they needed time to recover and recoup. And militaries didn't fight in the winter. They were terrible conditions. It was always the exception if they fought in the winter. And so this encampment was like a temporary settlement, a temporary town that they built so that they could prepare to fight in the spring and in the summer. Now, what were the conditions at Valley Forge? Well, first of all, it was cold, it was low on supplies, and it was full of sickness, okay? They could not get supplies into Valley Forge from Congress, and they could not get supplies from around the area, which we'll talk about a little about later. It was cold, it was winter, it was miserable, and it was full of sickness. There was dysentery, which is not good, but dysentery and smallpox, which was killing a lot of men, and it was just rampant. So I want to be clear about something, though, which is that it wasn't that there was no supplies or housing in the area or no food. It was that the Americans couldn't get access to it, like I said. They didn't have proper supply lines. And the British, the people in the area, they were trying to, the soldiers were trying to buy food with continental money. And people weren't accepting that because they didn't think it had any value. And the British could just forage better. They could live off the land. Foraging is hunting and gathering to be able to sustain yourself. And the Americans couldn't do this on the level of an army. The British were just better at that. And by the winter's end, 100 men deserted, which means they just left the army and their responsibilities. And so things were not looking good. And John Adams even lost confidence in Washington. The good news is, though, is that things were about to change. Things did indeed get better for the Americans, right? So first of all, they came up with this process called inoculation, which is where you introduce a small amount of a virus into the body, and then the body kills that, and then it becomes immune. And so they did this with smallpox, and way less men died from smallpox because of it. And they also just improved hygiene overall. They stopped peeing and pooping where they were sleeping, like much better. Von Steuben was a German army officer, which you can learn more about in the module. But von Steuben, he came and was recruited, and he brought order and discipline. Discipline meaning the controlled and consistent manner of behaving. And he brought military discipline to the men. And Nathaniel Greene organized and improved foraging parties, built roads and supplies. So the men were finally able to bring to eat and more consistently and have the supplies they needed. Plus, spring brought warmer weather, so needed. And the supplies from the French were coming up those new supply lines that Greene established, uniforms and guns. And by the end of Valley Forge, Washington's men left well-armed, well-fed, and well-trained. Anyway, so that's all I got for the lecture. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me. And yeah, I'll see you guys soon.